Okay, tonight we're finishing up the series on the iceberg theory. I'll be talking about the recovery process and how to go about it. And what I want to do tonight, and we'll start a new series next week. And I'll be doing the series on how to do a positive inventory of your life. Okay, we'll start that series next week. Okay, I want to start off tonight by doing a reading. And I picked a reading from my book, Eating Disorders Anonymous, my recovery program. One of my favorite readings I want to share with you from that book. It fits into our topic for tonight. There is no magic about recovery. It is hard work. We were powerless to change until we came to believe that we could get into recovery. We then surrendered, usually in fits and starts, to the uncomfortable process of making deliberate changes in our response to life. This process of giving up our old reactive coping mechanisms and adopting new deliberate active skills and attitudes gradually restores our integrity, self-esteem, and authority. This is not an overnight matter. There are sure to be setbacks, moments of deep unhappiness and fear. Yet we found when we work diligently and patiently, we're amazed at the quality of peace, happiness, and usefulness never before imagined. We wish this for you, whether you find recovery in or out of these rooms. We hope you will find something here you can use, that you may find opportunity to share your experience with still others. For such work brings calm and freedom from despair when all other measures fail. We welcome you to join us in this road of recovery as we trudge the road of happy destiny together. I always love that reading because it really brings home to me all the fundamental concepts of recovery. And some of the words I want to share with you on a very simple basis. For example, the word patience, the word stick to it, the word diligence. Because one of the things that we have to understand, I wanted to say that strongly tonight, we have to understand that recovery is a process. It's not an event. And it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes commitment. What's so beautiful about it, though, if you're willing to stick with it, work through it, eventually you'll begin to experience that sense of happiness, joyous, and free. But happiness of moving forward, which is very beautiful. And I share this with you because I feel very strongly about it. But we're talking about the iceberg. The iceberg is a frozen mass. And so many of us over the course of our journey in life will realize it. But we have to learn how to defrost the iceberg. How do we defrost it? There's a process to it. And that's the part that's hard for us. You know, I joke a lot about codependence. But codependents have a tendency very many times, you know, to want to get all the books, all the outlines, go home, study them, and then solve everything overnight. Please don't do that. Recovery doesn't work that way. There's a process to it. And so when we talk about the iceberg, the process has 4 components to it. There's a physical component to it. There's an emotional, spiritual, and even a social component to it. It means coming out of isolation. It means being able to arrest addiction if addiction is part of the process. And for many of us, addiction has, as we said before, many faces. Being able to overcome the fear and the illusion, be able to overcome control, to learn, as the reading said, I have to come to believe that anything is possible, that change can take place. The hardest part of recovery is grieving and letting go of the old and opening up to the new. And believe me, it's not easy, because so many of us go through struggle in life. I shared this on a personal level in my own life. I lived in the iceberg for a long period of time. That's why I can talk about it. I lived in it to 1986, and that's close to 46 some years of living in the iceberg, which meant that deep down inside, I really had no strong feelings. Everything was shut off. I was frozen. But yet I was able to perform and function on the outside. One of the ways I describe the iceberg in a very simple way, it's like a Kelvinator freezer. Pretty and beautiful on the outside, comes in all sizes, shapes, and colors. But the inside is frozen solid. And I bring that out because we have to learn that everything we do in life has to be done slowly, gradually. My sponsor used to say this to me all the time. He used to say, Vince, recovery is about doing things a little bit at a time. If you learn that much today, you've made progress. Don't do any more. That's enough. And just a little bit, little bit, little bit, and little bit, over a period of time, things begin to happen. I call it the miracle of recovery. Yes, we all have issues. Those issues are deep inside of us. But if you try to open them up and deal with them, it takes time. For example, physically, if I really am connected to an addiction, I have to learn how to arrest it. And that's not easy. Because once you put down the addiction, no matter what it is, and we have the faces of addiction, could be drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, money, it can be work, it can be a lot of things. Anything I can use to run and hide from life, to run from dealing with life. And the amazing part about it is, so many times, even though we actually say we're in recovery, we're not in recovery. So many times I've experienced this. People put down an addiction, then later on, picked up another addiction and migrated from one addiction to another addiction to another addiction, keep looking for some way to run away from and to hide from, having to feel, having to deal with feelings, having to literally go through that process of defrosting the iceberg, looking at what's inside, getting in touch with it. And that's a combination, not just of physical, because all of us understand the process called detox. When I begin to face things in my life that I don't want to face, I begin to work on them. All of a sudden, I'm going to go through struggle. I'm going to go through pain. I'm going to go through the concept of change. That's why I say this, and I'll say it very strongly. You really can't do this process unless you do it in conjunction with others. It's almost like we need family. You heard the phrase so many times, it takes a family to raise a child. It takes a community to raise a child. Well, all of us, when we first come into recovery, are like little children. And it takes a community. It takes a family to connect us and to help us in recovery. Tonight, as I look on the screen, we are all family. We are connected to each other. And because we're family, we're part of one another. And as a result, then we need each other's help, guidance, and direction. Be open to it. We have to learn we can't do this by ourselves. We have to be open to something greater than ourselves, a higher power. We have to be open to new ways and new directions. And change is never easy. And many of us, as we get into recovery, we're going to go through the grieving process. It's like saying goodbye to the old. That's difficult to do because literally, it means opening up in new directions, new concepts, and new areas of life. You know, I look at my own life and my own journey, and I realize now, for the first 46 years of my life, I lived in the iceberg, and I covered it in many ways. But just like anybody else, I now understand what was said to me by so many beautiful people in recovery, by Al-Anon, by people in AA, by people in different parts. They used to always talk about this word, spirituality, getting in touch with your spirit, the energy inside of you. I never truly understood it. That may sound strange coming from someone who was a Catholic priest for 20 years. I realize now I did not understand spirituality. I understood religion. But as you open the door and go into the process, you begin to realize that real spirituality is coming to an acknowledgement, coming to a discovery of the gift of who you really are, to begin to come alive, to be able to live, be able to celebrate, to enjoy life. Not that you're going to solve all your issues and problems. Some issues will once in a while come and haunt you, probably till about 10 days after you're dead. It's not a problem at all. We'll always have some issues. We're human beings. We're going to go through our changes. And once we get through one process, we move to another process. That's why you're never done. And that's why we need one another. We need to be connected. I realize today it takes a whole concept. It takes family, it takes community, it takes recovery, it takes therapy, it takes whatever it takes. But it means to be open up, to be able to experience things and do things on the journey of your life. I realized on my own journey, I spent a lot of money on therapy, working with people, being connected to people. If I had that money today, I'd be in good shape. I'm in good shape anyway, because it was an investment. And investments are the greatest things in life. One of the greatest investments you can make on your journey is to open up that door to change. You need to be able to let go. It's hard to let go. And that's why it's so important sometimes. You almost have to take time to say goodbye so you can say hello. And I've seen this in people in recovery. I've seen people in different areas of life. I've seen doors open. I've seen new things begin to happen. And it gets exciting. And yet, this process I'm talking about is a slow, gradual, little bit at a time, rediscovery, opening up doors, patience. As my father used to say, pacienza. Nothing happens overnight. It's a process of life. Let it happen. And I've seen the miracles in my own life and all the miracles of people around me. I was speaking of a gentleman whose name I don't want to use. He used to come and see me, and he used to fight and battle, with this codependency, with addiction, with all kinds of problems, and it took me a long period of time just to get him to take the first step into recovery. He would, make believe he took it for all kinds of crazy things. And then one day he took that step. He began the process. Then he quit. Then he went back. Then he quit again. Then he went back. But he kept going back. And then one day he stayed. And the next day it began to happen. And 2.5 years later, he's a totally different person. You can see the change happening inside of him. That change didn't happen overnight. That also involved the battle and the fight. And so many of us go through this in life. I want to make these changes. I want to look at life. I want to do my growing. I want to work my program. That's why I'm so grateful. A lot of gratitude to the steps. The steps are a gift. I call them the principles of life. They will teach us self-love, self-awareness, self-discovery. They'll teach us how to be able to let go, how to be able to release the old and say goodbye to it. They'll teach us to open up new doors in the course of our recovery. But they work. You need people to work them with. You have to work them one day at a time. And I know in my own journey, I'm starting the steps all over again now. I just got my work for step one. I want to go back to basics, back to fundamentals. Because I believe that we're a constant beginner, constant growth process, a constant learning. And every day you wake up with excitement and with gratitude, even though maybe you can't see where you're going, but that's okay. It really means you get started. It's another day. It's a process you're going through. Do the best you can. I love the old timers in the program. They used to say such very simple and beautiful things. It took me a long time to get it through my thick Italian head. The bottom line is, they used to say, get up, get on your knees, say a prayer of gratitude, ask for help, ask for guidance, ask for direction. Now, I'll tell you a crazy story. When I was a young kid, it really was at one time, honest to God. I wouldn't fibble on that one, but it really was. When I was a young kid, I went to a school, a grammar school in Camden, was the Italian Catholic grammar school. And we had these very wonderful ladies there, who basically scared me half to death. And they used to say to us, get on your knees every morning, say your prayers. Every night, get on your knees, say your prayers. They scared me so much, I could really think they could actually see me in my house. That's how scared I got of them. And I went to the seminary. In the seminary, they woke you up at 5:30 in the morning. Go down to chapel on your knees, say your morning prayers. At nighttime, back in the chapel on your knees, say your night prayers. Spent a lot of time on my knees. Then I come into recovery, and what's the first thing they tell me? Get on your knees and say your morning prayers. Get on your knees and say your night prayers. He says, I got calluses already. And I go back and do it again. But I understand all that today. But there's something humbling about getting on your knees. They also say, don't even worry about who you're praying to. Don't try to figure it out. Don't make yourself crazy. Just realize that we get messengers every day that come into our life. A little bit at a time with the help of others. You begin the process of looking at maybe one issue, work another issue, look at things. I look at that iceberg and I realize I can probably fit into probably 15 of those issues that are in there. The abandonment, the rejection issues, the fear, the control. There's still issues I have to work on today, even though I call them illusions. I realize the fact that those fear, shame, guilt, all those things, part of our journey. I know as a child, I joke about it a lot. When I was born, my parents gave me a PhD in fear, guilt, and worry. That was part of my process of growing up. And as a result, now I still have that baggage I have to work on. But you know what's so funny about it? You got to learn to do it with a little bit of a sense of humor. I'm not saying this stuff is funny. Trauma is not funny. Somehow, some way, I want to do my work. I want to do my growing with an attitude that somehow, some way, I'll get through this. I know with faith and trust and just being open to the process, you'll be taken where you're supposed to be taken. And that's a beautiful thing. But our problem is so many times because we grew up and now we try to control everything and we try to basically do everything. Sometimes I work with individuals that are mentally challenged. And sometimes I think they're lucky because they look at life in a very simple way. Nothing's complicated. And they laugh, they enjoy. Do they have a lot of issues? They got plenty of issues. But sometimes deep down inside, this thing can get us into a lot of trouble. It can make us half nuts and make us crazy. Gotta learn, relax. Real spirit and real growth takes place in here, in your heart. It doesn't take place up here. This is the ego. This is the spirit. And I have to realize over and over again, I can do my footwork. I can look at my work, but I also realize I can't beat myself up. So many codependents do their step work, but they want to just analyze every damn thing they did in their whole entire life. Take a break. You're not going to figure it all out. We all make mistakes. Use the Buddhist principle. Learn from them. Grow from them. They're gifts. Even our mistakes are gifts. Even our faults and failings are gifts. It's all part of this process of growing. I'll share a story with you. This is one of the things I learned through the recovery program. I'm grateful for it. When I was first ordained a priest, I was in a parish and I lived with an alcoholic pastor. And I lived in hell for 3 years. I mean, it really was. That's when I was introduced to Al-Anon back then. But I realized something today. I used to carry so much anger and resentment towards him. And I really thought I had worked it out. Then one day, I can't remember the exact date, but I think it was around 2014, somewhere in that area. I got a phone call one day from him. And he said, can I have lunch with you? And I was a little nervous about that because I didn't know what was going on. He said, "Don't worry." He said, I'm sober. I'm in the AA program. I want to make amends to you." So we had lunch. He made amends. And, it was so powerful. I was able at that point to make amends to him too. It was like a mutual amends because I had really carried so much stuff inside of me towards him, and we needed to settle that. And I'm glad I had that opportunity because he died a year later from cirrhosis of the liver. He got into recovery, physically too late. It was but he knew that when he talked to me. God works in very mysterious ways that if we just do our work, everything will come to us, but it will come in God's time, not in our time. I realize over and over again, it's almost like we live two different lives. Look at myself and I realize my life up to about 1985, 86 was one life. I had to watch a part of me die, come to an end. I had to be able to say goodbye to it. I actually went through a funeral service to say goodbye to Father Vince. I had to be able to allow a new part of my life to begin. Was that easy? No. Was it strange? Yes. Was it a new beginning? Yes. And yet the rewards that came from it, because you're able to cross over and move forward, and just do things a little bit at a time. You begin to discover the gifts you have inside of you. You begin to realize every one of us in this place, every one of us in this world has talents. We have gifts. Unfortunately, some people use them negatively. But we have to learn this. We can't go there. We have to work on the gifts that are inside of us and to use them to the best of our ability. They will change. You will go through all kinds of changes in life. We will go through even the changes physically. We'll go through them emotionally. We'll go through them spiritually. Our spirit will change. Our connection to our higher power will change. Everything changes constantly. Isn't that wonderful? It's exciting to know that because you're always discovering something new. That's where faith and trust come into play. That's where I know everything will go where it's supposed to go. Just do the best you can do a day's work, then your own self, and then go to sleep. But do it with gratitude. See, the attitude of gratitude is so important. It's all part of this becoming process. It melts the iceberg. An attitude of acceptance melts the iceberg. An attitude of humility melts the iceberg. And what I'm really saying is, I'm just saying, here I am. I'm open to learn. I'm open to grow. I'm open to new things. I'm open to new directions. Now, do I do it that easily? No. We usually do it kicking and screaming. We usually fight. Interesting. The things that we fight and we battle are usually the things that are best for us. Isn't that amazing? A good sponsor of mine said a long time ago, the things you need, you don't want. Things you want, you don't need. We have to learn that after a while. Yes, it's hard. It's hard to make decisions. It's hard to move in a new direction. It's hard to go through struggles. The struggle is part of the journey. And we have to slowly and gradually melt that iceberg. And as you melt it, you're going to discover things in there that maybe have been hidden for a long period of time. And over a period of time, the doors will start to open. I've worked with so many people in the course of my journey in life. I had the opportunity to do 5th steps with people to help them through different areas of life. I've seen people that have gone through such pretty horrible stuff and yet be able to come out on the other side. I don't care what happened in the course of your journey. You might think you're the worst person on the face of the earth. I'll tell you a secret. Somebody will always top it. Don't worry. Hang around long enough. You'll hear the stories. You'll hear what happens. It's totally amazing. I did a lot of 5th steps, as I said. I've heard a lot of people's stories. Of course, I can't share too many of them. But there's one story I like to share that I think is important. I remember this gentleman I met him in a place called South Philadelphia. You remember that place? It's a different state. That's okay, but it's all right. Anyway, I met him there when I was running Starting Point in South Philadelphia. And basically, I sat down with him and he said something to me. He said, I was a priest then. He said, Father Vince, I have done some things in my life. I've told nobody about them. I'm coming in here today. I want to sit down and I can't keep this stuff inside of me no more. I have to be able to talk about it. And he went on to talk to me about some things that I can't repeat here because some of them involve a lot of touchy issues. But he talked to me for almost 3 hours. Then he came back again, and he came back again. We worked on stuff. Here's a guy that was down and out, lived on the streets for a while, had done some pretty horrible things. I have seen him change. And then what I loved so much about it was he was able to pull himself up. He was able to help a recovery, finally begin to clear out and change his whole entire life. Now, did that happen overnight? No. I did that fifth step with him way back in the early 80s. And just recently, I did a memorial service for somebody at Starting Point. And after the service, this gentleman was there. He walked up to me, put his arms around me, and he said, do you remember me? I said, I'll never forget you. He said, come with me. We walked out to the front of Starting Point's building, and we have a brick there and a picture of the old house in Philadelphia, the original Starting Point. And he said, see that door? It was a door in the side of the building. He said, I walked into that door and I walked into a new life. Was it painful? Yes. It took me a long time to work through what I worked through. And today, Vince, with the grace of God and the recovery in my life, I now own a contracting company. I'm doing really well. I have a lot of people working for me. My life has changed dramatically. I just want to hug you. If it's okay, can I kiss you? I said, sure. Italians, we do that stuff. But the bottom line was, I realized over and over, I saw a miracle. But he's not the only one. I've seen so many of them. I look at myself. I think I look at myself as a miracle. I see miracles in this room of stories I could talk about right here, but I won't talk about it. Don't worry, I'll get nervous. But the bottom line is, every one of us is a walking miracle. Every one of us is important. Every one of us is on a journey. Every one of us is in this process of growing. And you never know when you're touching another human being. Somebody comes into your life, they get connected to you. It's just amazing. I tell this story so many times. I shared one of my books with somebody at Starting Point. And later on, they come up to me and they say things like, how'd you know that? How'd you know I needed this book? How'd you know? How'd you know? I said, I didn't know. I don't even know who you are. What's your name? The bottom line is, God works in mysterious ways. Things happen. It could be a little thing here, a little thing there. It's the little miracles that come that open up the gifts, open up the talents, open up the areas in your life. It's totally amazing. I remember giving talks at a place in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Water Department. I was their EAP counselor for a while. And I remember giving talks there to people. I remember people coming up later. And just recently, I got a gentleman that contacted me and he said, I know you don't remember me. He said, Vince, but you came and gave a talk a long time ago. And he told me about it. And he said, you don't know how much it changed my life. And he was on the lecture today at noontime. It's totally amazing how my life changed dramatically as a result of that. Thank you. He said, I know you don't remember who I am. Now I do, because he reintroduced himself to me. It's just interesting as you go through the process and you look at these things and you realize, wow, the miracles. We are miracles, and don't be afraid to let the miracle inside of you come alive. Don't be afraid to melt that iceberg. Let that iceberg begin to come down. Let the doors open up. And I'm going to tell you a little bit at a time and take your time. As they say in the time, go slow, relax. Take your time. Do a little bit at a time. Little bits, a bunch of little bits make a lot of bits. It's a way in which we go and go through things in life. And so we do things, we work on things a little bit at a time. So the recovery process is a process, even socially, to come out of hiding, to begin to interact, socialize, connect with people, work in different directions. Today, I hugged a guy at Starting Point, who I worked with in rehab years ago. He's now working as a counselor in a rehab. I could tell you a story there. It might turn your hair up a little bit if you knew his story. But the bottom line is change, growth, the way things happen. And it's so beautiful to open up and see the miracles and see them connected. And just realize the fact that, it happens to all of us. So many of us have touched so many people in the course of our journey in life. It might be as a teacher. It might be as a nurse. It might be in a school system. It might be any place. It might be on a job. Maybe just on a job, being nice to the person next to you, acknowledging someone, thanking them. All that little stuff melts the iceberg. It's the little things that melt it, not the big things. So put the ice picks away, right? We don't melt it that way. What we do is hurt ourselves that way. Start the process of melting, letting it happen. And that means, what is my attitude? Do I have an attitude of gratitude? Am I grateful for every little thing in life? Am I grateful for the people around me? Am I grateful for my family, for my spouse, for my partner? Am I grateful for different people in the course of my journey? Yes, be grateful. Have a sense of humility. Be open to new things. Be open to learn. Be open to new areas. Have a sense of humor. Laugh at yourself once in a while. Because, we're doing some strange stuff. Come on. It's all part of it. And as I get older, I'm doing more and more strange stuff. It's just unbelievable. It's a beautiful part about life. Do things always work out exactly the way you want them to work out? I hope not. I really don't. That means you're growing, you're learning. You're going through little curves here and there. It's how life is supposed to be. That beautiful, beautiful up and down process. That's what it's really all about. Be nice to the person you work with, even when you have a hard time. Love someone that's hard to love. I try to pray every day for people that I have a hard time with. Hope they have peace. Hope they have serenity. That's what it's all about. It's part of the process in life. Prayer is a gift. Prayer melts the iceberg. Gratitude melts the iceberg. Acceptance melts the iceberg. Love melts the iceberg. All these things actually are the little heaters in life that melt that iceberg. So try to the best of your ability to go through the journey of every day with an attitude of gratitude, humility, humor, acceptance, and love. It's a beautiful gift. And sometimes you're letting somebody know that you care about them. A small little gift. One of the things I've learned to do, and it's kind of interesting, when I walk through the waiting room and I see people sitting there, I just stop and say, hi, how are you? How you doing? And start maybe a conversation once in a while with someone. Walked past a lady the other day and she said, she had a mask on. And she said to me, hi, Vince, remember me? I said, well, and she took the mask off. Oh, yeah, I remember you now. She said, went through your group a long time ago. Thank you. Can I give you a hug? I said, sure. No problem. Little things. You don't know. You don't even know what's happening, but it's a little thing. I met a guy that was coming out from his therapy session. He was a tall guy. He's probably about 6'7", 6'8", and I just saw him. I said, wow. I said, what basketball teams you play for? He said, I play for a college in Florida. And so we got to start talking basketball. Then he told me a story. He said, you know why I come here? Because I lost my son to a drug overdose. And he started to cry. And I spent some time with him and I said, look, how about if you give me your son's name, the day he died? Let me put his name on our memorial wall. You would do that? I said, sure. So I walked him back and showed him the memorial wall. I put the name is up there now. When he came back again, I went in, brought him in, and I said a little prayer with him. I said, your son will be remembered. Don't worry. I looked at a guy that was pretty tall, and I talked about basketball. Why did I do that? I don't know. You asked me, did I pick him out? No, I just saw him. I said, wow. You know, I used to referee basketball, so I like talking about basketball. What can I tell you? So it was kind of a neat story. You never know where things are happening and things are happening. So I'm telling you right now, please, 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 as I pray tonight, remember, we all are a little bit of the iceberg, but defrosting is what it's really all about. And when you defrost something, go slow. Have that attitude, have an open attitude of learning and growing. Realize no matter what happens, the higher power is there with us and guides us. So let us pray. God and my understanding, my higher power, my higher presence, I call upon you to guide us, to be with us, strengthen us. Give us the gift of gratitude and humility. Give us the gift of openness. Teach us to walk the journey of life, asking for your help, your guidance, and your direction. Teach us to realize that we're not alone. Teach us to realize that we need each other. That all of us, deep down inside, have our hurts and our struggles. They're part of who we are. Give us the strength to be open to share them with others, to share the gift of life. So we come here in gratitude, we come here in love. We ask you help us and guide us as we slowly but surely begin to defrost that little iceberg inside of us. And realizing as we do it, we will be able to heal, grow, become closer to one another and closer to the gift of life. We thank you. We thank you with gratitude and love for all the gifts you've given us. We ask this and we pray this in your name. Amen.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.